Hey, welcome to this episode of Hollywood Breaks. If you're a movie fan, you're going to like this episode. We discuss what Paramount is doing right and the possibility of what Discovery and Warner Brothers have in store. So, welcome to this episode of Hollywood Breaks. Dude, I watched the Top Gun trailer, the extended trailer.
Of course you did.
Come on. I don't know why I geek out about the Top Gun thing, but I know it's going to be good just from the rumors you've been telling me. So that's got me more hype.
Mm-hmm.
The extended trailer was a little bit different, wasn't it? Because they basically at the very end kind of give you the DVD extra kind of part of it of like how we made it. But but those shots of the G-force, those guys taking off and hearing about how it's an IMAX, I think I understood the play a little bit of. This is a big screen experience. When they say, "Oh, we shot this on 6 IMAX cameras," you're like, "Oh, I need to go to the movie theater to watch this." And I think that was their point.
Yeah.
But I'm stoked, man. I'm ready for this movie to come out.
Listen, I don't blame you. I'm also very excited about it. I've been excited about it since it was supposed to release 2 years ago.
And you're going to go to the theater and watch it, right?
I'm going to go to the theater and watch it.
Your TV? Okay.
As you have said, I have it on very good authority that it's a great movie. I can't reveal my source, but it's someone who is in sort of the upper echelons of Paramount, and they have said it's a wonderful movie. So it's to describe it the way they described it is it's the kind of movie you go to the theater. It's the perfect popcorn movie. That's the best way to describe it.
Great.
And that's obviously how they're positioning. And I wholeheartedly support the idea of the 6 IMAX cameras. Warner Brothers did something very similar with the set Dark Knight. They talked a lot about how Christopher Nolan actually shot in IMAX versus conversion. So you get, for example, the first 6 minutes of Dark Knight is all shot in IMAX, the robbery sequence. And that's why if you see it in IMAX, you get the floor to ceiling effect.
Right.
It's like the entire screen is filled and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I understand
cheating,
why,
right? That's
yeah.
They're
not cheating by converting it or just pushing it onto a bigger screen like some movies do. I will say though, the trailer itself, I wasn't feeling it as much. And I think, and again, this may just be me, but I think the nostalgia play feels like the smarter move here. Like just because honestly, I'm not sure they're going to get non-fans to show up. Maybe they have research saying that non-fans are kind of into this. I don't have access to that, so I can't speak to it. But in my sort of gut tells me that this is the kind of movie that's really going to only appeal to the people who know and are familiar and love the original, which is a big audience. Don't get me wrong.
No, so go with this for me, because educate me on this process. You've been in these meetings before. You've had to like face the fire with filmmakers or whatever. My theory would be, and this is just flat theory because we're winging it here a little bit, in that Tom Cruise gets paid based off a theatrical release. So they're pushing to say go to the theater. And so there's another play besides like, hey, maybe we'll appeal to audience based off the story. I think they held back the film because of that theatrical thing, because clearly there was no reason to hold back the movie unless they were concerned about people going to the theaters. And then this last push is, again, like I feel like it's a big theater push. Do you think that's what it is? Like, do you think there's another like monetary situation that they're stuck in that they have to be talking about that more? Because as you say that, I'm kind of thinking you're right. Why didn't they just make it a traditional? Why didn't they just hype up the story and tell me Val Kilmer's in it or whatever?
They did. I mean, they did give a shout out to him in this new one that he's the admiral who recommends Maverick for the job. But I think part of it is Tom Cruise is very committed to theatrical, and I don't think at any point there was ever going to be a scenario where he was going to be okay with releasing this film on streaming. And that was probably what sort of held their feet to the fire, resisting releasing it when there were still some restrictions across the country. And I'm not sure what his deal is. I'm sure it's quite rich, but the other side of that is his movies have a tendency to be very expensive because he does a lot of his own stunts. And he constantly wants to switch things up. try new things. I mean, I think in this one he actually flew the planes versus in the first one he was just in a simulator. So he is known for pushing.
It did look like that in the in this
he's known
trailer.
for pushing the boundaries.
Sitting in the driver's seat.
Yeah, he's known for pushing the boundaries. You know, we all know the stories about his Mission Impossible antics and all the things that he's done, like literally hanging outside of a plane as it takes off. He actually did that, which is insane. But that's what people expect from him now. He has that brand. So that obviously increases the costs. And regardless of what you say about it going on the streaming, the reality is movies make more money if they have a longer box office run, especially if they have a shot of making a lot of money, which obviously Top Gun 2 does. So I think that is a big factor. Cruise is committed to theatrical, and he has a lot of pull at Paramount. They've invested a lot of money in him with all the Mission Impossibles they have coming up. There are 2 they're shooting right now, back to back, basically. Yeah. It's going to cost them a ton of money. So they're very invested in him being sort of the consummate movie star. And I think that is one of the reasons why they're pushing this sort of, this is the thing to see in theaters. Don't wait till it comes on streaming. It's not worth it. And it's an interesting play. I think that's a smart way to do it, by talking about how, hey, we actually shot it in IMAX. So if you pay to see it in IMAX, you're actually going to get the IMAX experience. Now, whether or not that broadens to a wider set of audience, and whether or not the nostalgic fans care about that, I'm not entirely sure that's accurate. But at the same time, it gives them another aspect to play to the audience, to convince them to drop the money to see it in theaters and not wait for 45 days till it's so
interesting, because like well, one is I'll go with that basic idea too, is great, it's a theatrical release, it is Top Gun, let's get people out there, and I do think this big push is to say get in the theater and do that work, but I also think of the other movies that are being released. I don't know if there's any other movie I'm that excited about. I think what's a Mobius movie was there? Or
I have a question for you, Tim.
All right.
Are you going to go see Sonic the Hedgehog 2?
No, I'm not going to see Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Why not? Everybody else is.
Well,
come on. I mean, that's the other thing.
You're talking about the Jim Carrey movie, right? The one
yes.
Where Jim...
Yes. No. And while we're talking about it, while we're talking about Paramount, we have to give all credit to Mark Weinstock and his team, because they are crushing it when it comes to marketing. This is their fourth #1 open in a row, I believe.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2?
Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which, by the way, has made 72 million in its 3-day weekend, which is more than the original, which, by the way, opened in February of 2020 before everything shut down. And that still made 58 in its opening weekend. So they increased their box office from the first original, which is great. It got pretty solid reviews, but a cinema score, which is great for a movie of that caliber. So that will make it 4.
Wait, this is the 4th movie. So you're talking about 4th movie, Paramount, Quiet Place 2. Okay, yeah. Which was, we talked about that a lot. Right. In pandemic, they kind of played the game and did it right. Wow, they're playing the theatrical game, aren't they? Paramount, man, they're coming back.
Yeah. And then Scream, which debatable whether or not that's actually a quote unquote hit, but it did open up to #1. 3, and relaunched the franchise, which was essentially dormant.
Yeah.
3 was Lost City, which did very well. And it's continuing to do well.
Dude, I love that movie. We went to the theater to watch it. It was so fun. Yeah. It's so fun.
And then the 4th one is Sonic, and obviously the 5th will be Top. They're going to open Top Gun. I mean, come on. Gimme.
Top Gun's also Paramount. Wow, that's pretty.
All theatrical? So I mean, again, the fact that their marketing department's able to open these movies and do well speaks to the sort of the team that Mark has assembled. I do feel for Jim Giannopoulos, who is essentially responsible for putting the slate together and is just sitting on the sidelines while all his movies open and pretty well thereafter. So
his genius is showing up right now, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
What's going on at Paramount where they I guess had no risk? I mean, those films don't feel like they're #1 films when you compare them to what's been happening in the last 5 years, 10 years or so, where you're comparing it to a Marvel movie. But when you hold back all the other movies, you have these these kind of fun films to go watch and see.
And I think but it's also, they do have a distribution chief over there, Chris Aronson, who is pretty genius with his dating strategy. And I think they've just been putting these.
You mean the date it's released, not going out on dates with.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, that was it. That was the industry jargon.
Totally.
I apologize.
Yeah. Dating strategy.
Not dating. The date the movie was released.
We're not talking about Chuck Woolery moments.
Yeah, where we're right. Seeing 2 and 2. Yeah. That he has just put the movies in just the exact right spot. Like Quiet Place 2, they held to that right at the moment when people were starting to hunger to go back to the movies. Scream, horror, which is always does pretty well and is definitely a theatrical play. The Lost City, which was very much a genre and an audience that had basically been ignored for almost 2 years. And then you come with Sonic, which is families who haven't had an opportunity to go to the theater because Disney keeps pushing all their Pixar stuff on a Disney Plus. So now these parents have the opportunity to take their kids to the theater. And obviously parents are now comfortable to go back to the theater, take their kids to the theater. So that coupled with a very smart, obviously, marketing strategy, I think has served them quite well. And, it'll be interesting to see like how this plays with, because, if you read between the tea leaves, Brian Robbins, who's now the current chairman of Paramount, the studio, I should say, because Paramount Global is the parent company now. Sure. Was hired to push streaming. Like the rumblings were he went to Sherry and said, listen, I can make this work. I can help Paramount Plus. Just give me the keys to the kingdom and I'll make it happen. But now you have all these movies that have been successes that are clearly purely theatrical plays. So over the course of the next 6 months to year, we'll probably start to see the Brian Robbins strategy come into play. Because I think a lot of what we're seeing now is basically Jim Giannopoulos' strategy playing out.
Their streaming strategy is kind of funny anyway. Like I swear I watch Paramount created items on streaming, but I don't have Paramount Plus. I watch it like on Hulu or Apple, or I watch it somewhere else.
Right. Well, if you have Yellowstone's the biggest example of that because Peacock has the rights to it.
Yeah, so Peacock
and Yellowstone is I think it is the most popular show on TV right now. And Paramount, it's not on Paramount Plus.
And where's 1883? Because I know that's the same story.
That's on Paramount Plus. That's on Paramount Plus. So that is because that's in the Taylor Sheridan universe, which is what Paramount is building. And Paramount Plus. So, you can see.
I watched it through my Prime. Right. It's Paramount Plus through Prime. I know that sounds really lame how I go about it, but that's that. Actually, I think I saw it in an Academy screener. So that's probably, my brain is probably.
It's funny. I just got an email this morning from Peacock, just, goosing me to binge all 4 seasons of Yellowstone on Peacock.
Yeah. You should.
Which is hilarious because I didn't
Have you seen it yet?
Yellowstone?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
love it.
What is happening? Let's talk about that for a second, because 1883 is doing the same thing. Yeah. It's a very cinematic experience. Like it is not Netflix content.
It's not Power of the Dog with its sort of scanning vistas, as our former guest Robin Geisen pointed out, have absolutely nothing to do with the story.
It has that like Ozark strategy where there's always a cliffhanger, but it's also it's very cinematic. It's pretty amazing to watch it. Sometimes the episodes are almost like, okay, that could have been 5 minutes. That would have been 5 minutes of the film.
They get a little CW every now and then, but for the most part, they're pretty solid.
But and then the 1883, it's great. It's the opening sequence where it's starting, how the storyline rolls itself out, and how these players bring themselves together. But I'm gonna guess financially there's some money shots where they're doing certain items, but then they've probably figured out the budget where it's like, no, it's just a ranch. So the setting is like in 1883, they're simply just traveling on the open range. Like, there's nothing to pay for. You just get people on the open range and have them have dialogue or whatever.
The only thing you're paying is for is the period clothing.
But those makers, the directors and the creator,
Sheridan.
It's awesome. It's really, really well done.
Well, he's building a whole universe. Like he has 1883, and now they're going to do triple sevens. which is the ranch in Texas where the one guy is sent to actually become a real cowboy. I think it's called the Quad Sevens or something like that. It's like a fictional ranch in Texas, and they're going to do a show around that now. So it's like he's building this universe. So as our former guest Tim Heinel pointed out, it's sort of like building this multiverse of stories around a central popular character or characters or universe, if you will. And that's what they're doing at Paramount. And it's so far it's working. They're getting some good burn on their The Offer too. There's been some really great comments online, and which is their show about the making of The Godfather. So they might see some upticks on that. So I think, it'll be, like I said, it's interesting to see what comes out of Paramount moving forward, because as I said, this is the Jim Giannopoulos slate when he was committed to theatrical, and he was like, I'm not getting it up theatrical. I'm a movie guy. This is where they belong in movies. I'm not selling everything to Netflix and Amazon that isn't a big IP driven pick like the Sony strategy. So, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because again, over the course of the next few months, we'll start to see Brian Robbins' green lighting authority start to show up in some of their picks. So,
well, it's amazing that Paramount is just stepping up and thrive. I mean, they're the come from behind winner right now, clearly, where the other major studios were Sony. I'm talking about Sony, Disney, Universal, and Warner Brothers. Think about their strategies during the pandemic. They didn't really step up. They kind of like pulled back, waiting for it to get over, which we know that was kind of a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could take it. So Sony basically, they took the tack of, as I just mentioned, anything that's heavily IP driven, Marvel, something like that, or a big sort of IP sequel, that's theatrical play. Anything else that doesn't look like it's going to make money, we'll sell to Netflix and Amazon. And they doubled down on that by signing deals with both those companies. And then you had Universal, which was sort of they were, even before the pandemic, they were always the ones that were trying to figure out how to play with the release strategy to optimize revenue. Sure. And they were the ones that committed to releasing Sing, I think it was Sing 2, exclusively online for straight premium VOD play. And then they were the ones that started signing deals with the major chains to say, like, well, if our movies don't open, like Ambulance, within 17 days, it's going to Peacock. And Ambulance, I think, will be one of the first ones that sort of falls under that rubric. So they will, within like a week and a half, it'll be on Peacock.
Dude, Ambulance? Like,
yeah. Well, we can talk about that in a second. I do want to talk about that in a second.
All right,
and then you have Warner Brothers, which we should also talk about, but Project Popcorn pushing all their 2021 slate onto HBO Max to goose subs there, which it's arguably seems like it might have worked. Whether or not it was a moneymaker for them, it's debatable because of all the money they had to shell out to keep talent happy. And then you're right, Paramount has been sort of the quiet in the background. Listen, they've had to deal with a lot, first of all, leadership change in the midst of the pandemic, which is never fun. And also the rumors that they're basically being propped for a sale. And, that's not always the best place to be in. And then, of course, you have all the streamers that are sort of, taking their market share as well. So,
yeah, I mean, again, like I'll just take it from a consumer point of view. I find some of this, whatever the strategy is, sometimes it feels like it contradicts itself in the marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. So HBO, I swear I watched, again, I think I watched that on Hulu because I don't even know if I have an HBO Max subscription, but I know I watch a lot of HBO content. The Lakers thing isn't Tammy Faye, wasn't that movie?
That was Hulu, I think.
Yeah.
Might have been Hulu.
But I swear, like I see the HBO logo a lot and not on HBO Max. So I feel like there's these weird distribution ideas, but you get this idea of a push of like, no, HBO Max is the platform for Warner Brothers. Except for HBO items, you're gonna watch those on Hulu. You're like, what the heck's going on here?
Well, technically, though, you are subscribing to HBO Max via Hulu. I know it's confusing, but that's technically what you are subscribing to.
So Hulu is basically just cable TV, and HBO is a channel.
Yeah, I mean, more or less. I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they've gotten rid of HBO altogether. It doesn't exist. You either get HBO Max or you don't. Like there's no, that when they first launched HBO Max, it was like there was HBO Max and there was HBO. I mean, it was a total shit show of a rollout.
Yeah.
But the benefit, one of the ancillary benefits of Project Popcorn is that it solidified HBO Max as where you went to see HBO material. There's no difference between HBO Max and HBO. So you going on Hulu, you are going basically on HBO Max. You could technically download the app to HBO Max and still be able to access it because you already have a subscription.
It's like watching Paramount Plus through Amazon. Like,
correct.
It's like, yeah,
very similar. Yeah,
which you then wonder,
confusing
like,
as hell.
Yeah.
Just like, Jesus, you guys make it any more complicated?
Yeah, and it is the consumer space. I think about it. You know, like my mom doesn't think about it, and probably why my mom just watches cable TV, because everything to navigate. Where would you find it? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So Warner Media Discovery, it's a real thing, huh?
Yeah. Discovery Warner Media, I believe is what it's called now. Original title.
Why? Yeah. Wow, that's really special. Why can't we just get rid of the word Warner Media off the planet? How about we deal with Warner Media and AOL?
It's a brand. I mean, especially among the investors, everyone knows Warner and Warner Brothers. It's a classic legacy studio, and I mean, I get why they kept it. It's just not exactly a brilliant use of the name, and their logo isn't exactly something to write home about in terms of design. But yeah, this past week was their first week. David Zaslav was sort of in charge. There was a raft of departures late last week. Most of the team that John Stankey from AT&T had put in place is gone. Jason Kilar and Ann Starnoff being the most prominent of those two.
Is it exit, like pushed, or just?
I think
disruption.
Well, Jason Kilar, it was pretty much assumed he was leaving. Like the minute, I mean, the merger was announced the day that a puff piece about him ran in the Wall Street Journal,
right?
And how he's changing media. And then that day, they announced the merger, which basically makes him moot. And so it was pretty much assumed he was gone because he was the AT&T guy, and AT&Ts are very corporate. It's very corporate, so they like their layers. Where clearly, David Zaslav came in and was like, listen, I don't need all these layers, these people. I want them all reporting to me. So now he has like 20 direct reports. So I'll be interested to see how he handles all this. He has said that Toby Emmerich can stay at Warner Brothers. The head of Warner Brothers TV can stay as well for now, it seems like. He did apparently look around for a potential movie studio head, but I guess nobody was really willing to take or he just didn't find the right candidate.
I'll take it
at the moment.
I didn't know.
Yeah, you want it?
Yeah, sure. I didn't.
So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the people on the Warner and Burbank have been through a lot the last couple of years. The AT&T sliced and diced that company pretty harshly, and now Zaslav's on the hook to deliver $3 billion in savings, which means a lot of layoffs and synergies. And there's a ton of debt that they have to pay down. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and, how it all plays into their, the theatrical versus streaming. And now they have to figure out what they're going to do with HBO Max, because HBO Max and Discovery are apparently going to be all one now. So you have to deal with what that's.
It sounds like what he's doing is he's taking online items and pulled this way, but also gives him a moment for Discovery to play in theatrical. So he's allowing Discovery to go and gain some more notoriety in theatrical, or maybe not. I mean, Discovery could just stay where it is. He himself can go play in the theatrical.
Right. I don't think so. I think he's installed a lot of his loyal lieutenants from Discovery in positions of influence. So they're going to have a big say in it. I think he did the usual making of the rounds in Hollywood, sort of talking to all the people. Brian Lord hosted several parties at his house where everyone came over to meet David and kiss the ring and yada, yada, yada. So like I said, it'll just be interesting because they have been through so much, and it has been sort of up and down over the course of the last few months and years, and Jason Kilar was a bull in a china shop in a lot of ways, in terms of just coming in and saying, this is how we're going to do things, and I don't care what you guys have done in the past, we're doing it this way. And talent relations, what are those like? So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how this all sort of works out. I think it's going to be, the next 6 months are going to be pretty rocky in terms of just sort of the transition and the synergies of the companies together. You know, what's gonna, is streaming going to be the priority? Are they going to play the game of quality over quantity? Or, but at the same time, the Wall Street and investors are going to push them to prove that this was a worthwhile merger. And, you know, I think there's a lot of opportunity. Discovery has a very loyal audience, and they play a lot more in the reality space, which is not necessarily something that Warner Media has a ton of experience in per se. I mean, they do have,
that's right, like
some stuff there, but
it feels to me like they recognize the behemoth that Disney is, and all the different areas and distributions and types of content that you can create and still be very powerful. Discovery is obviously held back a little bit. They didn't have the notoriety or the inroads to make that happen. Warner Media has all the channels, right? That's the opportunity. But it looks like a heavy lift. According to the CNN Business article about it, the company has some 40,000 staffers. So 40,000 employees, many of whom are concerned about layoffs. So you can really, like, the power of that kind of merger to get and make that ship move is going to be a big,
well, yeah. I mean, they're carrying something in a range of $48 to $50 billion in debt, I believe. It's one of the most heavily leveraged companies ever in terms of their debt load. So they're going to have to really look for that $3 billion of savings that was promised in the merger. And a lot of that is going to come from sort of the overlap between departments, right, and cutting down scale. And I mean, I don't think it's really going to affect a lot of the people at Warner Brothers, because they're mostly just the theatrical people, but sort of like the streaming world between Discovery Plus and HBO Max, like, oh, well, how many of those, like a lot of the marketing people are probably going to get let go, because it's obviously going to be some crossover there. And then there's the CNN Plus of it all, which has sort of had a rough ride the last week. It launched, I think, last 2 weeks ago, and the numbers differ on whether or not it was a horrible launch, or they have no subscribers versus like a pittance. But it's an issue for them. And Jason Kilar pushed ahead, and they have somewhere in the neighborhood of like 400 people working there. And, I think the first place that's going to get sort of a little bit of a dieting or a cut will be CNN Plus. And then we'll have to see what they do with that. Is that just going to become a tile on sort of the Discovery, HBO, whatever that streamer ends up looking like?
It's a good time to be buying CNN between election cycles, so that we can they can get a big like media push.
And depending on the party who's in control in November, CNN's ratings might go up again.
So exactly. You never know. Right. Discovery is like, vote Republican because we need more
because we need you guys to come back to CNN.
I know, right? I know it's such a big kind of moment in our industry too. Like, these big mergers always have this thought process of what feels like old school thoughts, is like, let's take two behemoths, put them together, and maybe we'll make something even bigger out of it. But our conversation about Paramount and realizing that there needs to be something that's nimble really happening. And the thought of like a bigger tech giant, another bigger tech giant trying to do some bigger thing or what, I don't know, like, it just feels like the world is asking different questions nowadays. And I'd be curious really where Discovery does their cutbacks and just kind of discovers where their vision is going to be. I get the idea of distribution, but we'll see it in the content, honestly. We'll see what they actually come up with, what the slate of creators they have out there, how Warner Brothers is going to be handled, how CNN is going to be handled, and then what they're really going to do with the Discovery brand. Because the Discovery brand is the one they're the one doing the buying, but it almost feels like a reverse acquisition where Discovery is really buying the notoriety of Warner Brothers and maybe the strategy of Discovery. So
we'll see. It'll be, like I said, the next 6 months I think are going to be rough for a lot of people, but after that, I think we'll get a clearer sense of what the future holds for Discovery Warner Media. Warner Media Discovery. I can't remember the name of
it. All right. I appreciate the fact that there's a lot of stuff that's happening and new questions being asked. Some of what I'm looking forward to in the next year really is how post-pandemic, we'll see which strategies will kind of build up studios, which one's going to get viewers. And maybe there'll be a shakeup at Netflix, and somebody will actually wake them up to what it takes to make it.
Yeah, they have a earnings report on Tuesday, I believe, and there's some nerves happening because I think they're going to miss their numbers, and I think their stock's going to take a bit of a beating. So it'll be interesting to see how the next few weeks shake out over at in Hollywood at that ginormous Netflix building.
That's the campaign, right? We have Discovery trying to get people to vote Republican so that they get people to watch CNN, and Netflix trying to vote Democrat, so we'll have another shutdown, and that way we can sit inside and watch more Netflix.
Sit inside and watch TV all day.
Like the big media clash between the two giants. I mean, the race is coming up. Well, my friend, I appreciate that. Have a great holiday weekend. I hope you're going to
Happy Easter to you.
Enjoy Sonic the Hedgehog. I think that might be more of your family demographic than mine.
Yeah, I've started to, my kids are starting to point him out when they see him on, thing. Oh, that's Sonic. I'm like, I get what you're trying to say. Okay, yeah. Maybe.
I think I miss Sonic. I think that's like that's one of those weird windows. Like 2 years later, and I might have been a Sonic fan because the video came out just at the age where I wasn't really going to play video games anymore. I feel like that with like Transformers or whatever, like just a few different years and I'd be a Transformers fan. But instead I'm like, I was too grown up.
Well, I played the video game. Already. That's why I know the character.
Yeah, the game, right? That's how, yeah. And Mario, same way. Like, I don't know. So I don't really care about Sonic. I gotta be honest with you.
Good to know,
and then
Tim, thanks.
Weird Jim Carrey. I don't know.
Well, he actually works. He works for playing the villain. It's a good fit for him, I think.
Yeah, okay. All right, enjoy the film. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. I will. You too.
Goodbye.